After I worked a double shift and woke to find my daughter's crib broken in the yard, my sister-in-law laughed. She doesn't deserve comfort. As my son cried, I collected the splinters with blood on my fingers, and years later, when I returned to their door, I left a box on the mat with a note that read, "I'm 34 now, a mom of two." I haven't told the story before, not really. A few close friends know bits, but even they don't know all of it. I think I needed to sit with it for a long time before I could put the words down. It still makes my chest feel tight, but I've carried this long enough. My husband died in 2016. His name was Aaron. He was 31 when it happened, forklift accident at a warehouse. Night shift. I was making mac and cheese for Caleb when I got the call. He was 5. Emma was still in my belly. I was 6 months pregnant. I don't think I even cried that night. I just stood there with the phone in my hand while the pasta boiled over. After Aaron died, I tried to hold everything together. Bills didn't stop. Rent kept going up. I didn't have a degree, just food service experience. I worked at a diner and picked up hospital kitchen shifts when I could. I went back to work 2 weeks after Emma was born. I didn't have a choice. That's when Tanya, my husband's sister, offered to help. She was my sister-in-law, but we were never close. She's 10 years older than me, no kids, single, very put together on the outside. Cold. Quiet, sharp kind of cold. I never felt comfortable around her, but she showed up at the hospital after Emma was born and said, "You're not doing this alone. You'll stay with me until you're back on your feet." I was sleep-deprived, grieving, broke. I said yes. Tanya lived in a nice neighborhood, big house. Her dad left her the place when he died. I packed up our things, grabbed both kids, and moved into her guest room. The first few weeks were okay. She cooked sometimes, bought diapers. I thanked her constantly. I didn't want to be a burden. But little things started happening. I'd come home from work and Emma's diaper would be soaked through. Or she'd be hungry even though I left bottles. Sometimes Caleb would say, "Aunt Tanya got mad today but wouldn't tell me why." I brushed it off. I wanted to brush it off. I needed the help. Then I started noticing how Tanya looked at Emma. Blank. Almost annoyed. Like she couldn't stand her crying or even breathing. I came home early once and heard Tanya snapping, "Why are you still here?" to a baby. I froze. Didn't say anything. I convinced myself it was just a bad day. I worked long hours. Hospital cafeteria in the mornings, diner at night. On the day everything happened, I was covering a double. I left at 6:30 a.m. and didn't get home until after 3 a.m. the next morning. When I walked in, the house was dark. I checked Caleb, asleep in his sleeping bag next to my bed. He liked to sleep near me when I was home. Emma was in the crib in the guest room, breathing softly. I kissed her forehead, pulled a blanket over her. I don't even remember lying down. I passed out in my clothes on the couch. The next thing I remember is Caleb screaming. It was still dark out, maybe just past 7 a.m. His scream wasn't like anything I'd heard before, not scared but terrified. I ran out into the hallway, heart going 1,000 beats a minute. The back door was wide open, cold air blowing in. I followed the sound of Caleb's crying into the backyard, barefoot. Emma's crib, the crib my husband built before he died, was in the yard, smashed. On its side. Pieces everywhere. Wood cracked down the middle. One leg snapped off completely. And Emma was lying in the grass, crying so hard she couldn't breathe, in nothing but a diaper and a thin onesie. Her lip was bleeding. Caleb was kneeling next to her, trying to cover her with his hoodie, sobbing. And standing on the porch, with a coffee mug in her hand, was Tanya, watching, like it was just another Tuesday. I didn't understand what I was looking at. My brain couldn't catch up. I grabbed Emma, checked her all over. She was scraped up, freezing, crying so hard her face was red. I looked up at Tanya and said, "What happened?" She just smirked, like I asked her something dumb. Then she said, "She doesn't deserve comfort. Not after what her father did to my father." I didn't get it. Not right away. And then it hit me. Tanya was still angry, years later, because she blamed Aaron for their dad drinking himself to death. Aaron had told me their dad was abusive, mean drunk, used to hit their mom. When Aaron left home at 17, Tanya stayed behind. She never forgave him. And now she was blaming Emma, a baby, for something that happened before she was born. I didn't say another word. I took Caleb's hand and carried Emma inside. I walked to the bedroom, shoved everything I could into 2 trash bags: diapers, formula, 2 pairs of shoes, Emma's blanket, Caleb's school folder, and 1 box of cereal. That was it. I didn't own a car. I walked us to the nearest bus stop, 3 blocks away. It was 18 degrees. I wrapped Emma in my coat. Caleb held onto my leg the whole time. We waited in silence. We stayed at a women's shelter for 3 weeks. Then a church helped me get into a studio apartment. I got a new crib from a donation bin. Emma had a small scar under her lip, but she healed. I did not. Years passed. I worked, saved, went back to school at night. Eventually got a job at a community clinic. We moved into a 2-bedroom. Emma grew up sweet and shy, always glued to me. Caleb started calling himself her protector. He never forgave Tanya either. I never saw her again. She didn't reach out. No apology. Not even when she found out Emma was in the hospital later with RSV. She never called. Nothing. I kept the broken crib pieces. 1 rail. I wrapped it in a towel and buried it in the back of the closet. I don't know why I didn't throw it out. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe I wanted to remember. Last spring something changed. Last spring something changed. I didn't plan it. I wasn't sitting around plotting revenge all those years. I was busy surviving, raising 2 kids, working full-time, going to parent-teacher conferences, fixing clogged drains, trying to be 2 people at once. But then Emma turned 8. We were at home, just the 3 of us. I baked a cake from a box. Caleb helped hang streamers. Emma had 2 friends over from school. She smiled all day. It was a quiet kind of joy, like the air felt lighter. That night, after everyone left, I tucked her in. She looked up at me and asked, "Why don't I remember when I was a baby?" Caleb remembers everything. I froze. I didn't know how to answer. I just kissed her forehead and said, "Sometimes our brains protect us from things we don't need to carry." I went into my room and pulled the old crib rail out from the closet. There was still a brownish smear on the wood. Emma's dried blood. It had never faded. That's when something started waking up in me. Not anger. Not grief. Something sharper. Like a bone I'd swallowed years ago, suddenly pressing against the inside of my throat. I didn't want to hurt Tanya, but I needed her to remember. I put the crib rail in a clean cardboard box. I wrapped it in white tissue paper. I sat on the floor and wrote a note, short and cold. Then I waited. But then something happened I didn't expect. A week later, Caleb came home from school quiet. He's usually chatty, not about his feelings, but about everything else. This time, he didn't say anything. Just took off his shoes and sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. I asked what was wrong. He said, "I saw Aunt Tanya." That hit me like a punch in the stomach. I asked where. He said she was parked across the street from his school, in the same old silver car she used to drive. He said he saw her through the window. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring at someone on the playground. Emma. He said he was sure. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that it was someone else. But Tanya always had that car. She lived across town. There was no reason for her to be near their school. I called the school the next morning and told them not to release my kids to anyone but me. I started leaving work early to walk them home. I didn't say anything to Emma, no point scaring her. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. It was Emma, sitting on the front steps of the school, hugging her backpack, smiling. The photo had been taken from far away, probably with a phone. It was printed on cheap paper. No note, just the picture. I went completely still. The only person who ever talked like that, "She doesn't deserve comfort," was Tanya. It was the same cold, same control, watching without speaking. I called the police, filed a report. They said unless there was a direct threat, they couldn't do much. They offered a patrol for a few days. I knew that wouldn't change anything. Then I checked my email, the old Yahoo one I barely use anymore. There was a message from an account I didn't recognize. No name, just the subject line. Tell her the truth. Inside, nothing but a date and time. October 6th, 2 p.m. That's Emma's birthday. Her real birth time. That's when I realized Tanya had been watching us for longer than I thought. And then I remembered something I hadn't let myself think about in years. Right after Aaron died, when I was still in the hospital with Emma, Tanya had taken Caleb for a weekend. I'd begged her. I just needed sleep. When she brought him back, he wouldn't talk for a day. He was only 5. I thought maybe the funeral confused him. I never asked what happened. I ask now. He's older. He remembers. And the things he told me changed everything. That night, after I saw the email and the photo, I didn't sleep. I waited until Caleb and Emma were in bed. Then I went into his room and sat on the edge of his mattress. He had his earbuds in, half asleep. I said his name quietly. He opened his eyes right away. I asked, "Do you remember the weekend you stayed with Aunt Tanya after your dad died?" He went still. Not afraid, just like he'd been waiting for me to ask. Then he nodded. He sat up in bed and said, "She made me sleep in the basement." I didn't say anything. I didn't move. He went on. "She said I had to be downstairs because I was too loud. But it was dark. And there were spiders. I cried and asked for you, and she said, 'Your mom's busy. She has to deal with the thing she pushed out.'" He paused. She meant Emma. I felt my throat close. He said she fed him once that whole weekend. One sandwich. No water bottle, just sink water. She didn't let him upstairs. Didn't let him call me. The TV didn't work. She gave him an old blanket and told him to stop whining. I asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged. "You were sad. You needed help. I thought maybe I did something wrong." He was 5. I walked out of his room and closed the door and sat on the floor of the hallway for a long time. I had protected Tanya in my head for years, told myself she was cold, but not evil. I thought maybe she snapped that morning with the crib. I thought maybe grief made her bitter. But she was already like that. Long before the crib. She had a plan. She wanted to punish Aaron. And when he died, she redirected everything onto our children. That's not grief. That's not stress. That's cruelty. Deliberate and slow. The next day, I called a lawyer. Not to sue. I couldn't prove much. It had been years. But I wanted to know if I could get a restraining order. I told her everything. She said without a direct threat or a recent incident, it'd be hard. The photo helped, but not enough. Stalking, she said, is hard to pin down until it's too late. I hung up and felt worse than before. I kept Caleb and Emma home from school that week. I told the school they were sick. I didn't go to work. I couldn't. I kept checking the windows, double-locking the door. Every time the mail came, I flinched. Then another twist, and this one almost broke me. That Friday, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't recognize the voice at first. It was deep, male, older. "Hi, this is Mark, Tanya's neighbor. I don't know if this number still works, but I found it in some old paperwork in her kitchen. I think you used to live here?" My heart dropped. He went on. "She asked me to bring in her trash bins last week, and she never came back. She's not answering her door. Not getting her mail. Her car hasn't moved. I'm kind of worried. If you hear from her, can you let someone know?" I saved the voicemail, replayed it 4 times. I didn't know what to make of it. I hadn't sent the box yet. It was still in my closet. But somehow, after the photo, the email, the stalking, she disappeared. And then came the final twist. Caleb's phone started getting texts from an unknown number. The first one said, "She lied about what happened." Then, "Ask her who made the crib break." And, "Emma wasn't supposed to survive." That's when I called the police again.
Different officer this time.
He took it more seriously. I gave him everything, the texts, the photo, the email, the voicemail from the neighbor. I even handed over the box with the crib rail. That was a week ago. Since then, no one has heard from Tanya. She's not at home. not answering any calls. Her car is still in the driveway, keys inside. And now there's one more thing. Yesterday, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address again. Inside was a drawing. Crayon, childish, messy. It showed a baby in a box. And someone standing over it with a hammer. The stick figure with the hammer had long hair. I think it's a drawing Caleb made when he was 5. Which means someone kept it all this time. Which means Tanya wasn't acting alone. I stared at the drawing for a long time. It was done on yellow paper, the kind from those cheap kindergarten art pads. I recognized Caleb's handwriting in the corner, clumsy block letters. Mommy. The figure with the hammer wasn't labeled, but it was clear. Long black lines for hair. No face. The baby in the drawing was in a square, maybe a crib. There was red scribbled everywhere. I don't think he meant it to look like blood, but that's what it looked like now. I sat on the couch holding that drawing like it was a live wire. The problem was, I remembered that drawing. Vaguely, but I remembered. It was from right after we left Tanya's house. We were still in the shelter. Caleb had been quiet for days. Then one afternoon he asked for crayons. I watched him draw while Emma slept next to me. He didn't say what it was. He handed it to me, then crawled into bed. I must have folded it and packed it with our things. I thought I lost it during one of the moves.
But here it was.
In my mailbox. Nearly 8 years later. Which meant someone had it this entire time. It hadn't been in my house. I moved 3 times. I went through everything during each move. That drawing was gone. So, how did it come back? I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the living room floor, lights on, baseball bat by the door. My chest felt like it was caving in. I kept asking myself the same question. Who else was in that house? That weekend, I took the kids to my friend Mallory's house across town. Mallory's been my closest friend since the shelter. She's one of the only people I trust. Her boyfriend is ex-military and built like a fridge. I felt safer there. While the kids played video games, I told her everything: the crib, the stocking, the drawing, the voicemail. She didn't interrupt. Just listened. When I finished, she said, "Tanya's house had a basement, right?" I nodded. She said, "Do you ever think about who else might have been down there?" I froze. I always assumed Tanya lived alone. She said she did. The upstairs was empty. No roommates, no family, no boyfriend. But now that I think about it, I never actually saw the basement. She kept it locked. She used to say it was full of junk or flooded, or that the door was warped. I believed her. I was so busy back then I didn't ask questions. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went through every memory I had of that house. Every time Caleb said he heard footsteps downstairs. Every time I came home and found Emma awake, crying, but Tanya nowhere in sight. And I remembered something else. There was always a second bowl in the sink. Even when Tanya said she hadn't eaten. Even when she said she ordered out. There was always a second bowl. Sometimes two. I never noticed at the time. Or I did, but I didn't think about it. But now it felt like something was slowly sliding into place. The texts. The photo. The drawing. She wasn't working alone. The next morning, I drove back to Tanya's neighborhood, parked 2 streets over, and walked the rest of the way. Her house looked the same. Gray shutters. Overgrown yard. Dead leaves on the porch. There was a light on inside. Just one near the back. I walked around to the alley and peeked through the slats in the fence. The basement window, small, square, ground level, was cracked open. And I saw movement. Just for a second. A shadow across the glass. Not Tanya. This figure was taller. Thinner. The way it moved didn't feel right.
Jittery.
Like someone who hadn't been outside in a long time. I backed away fast. Heart hammering. I left, went straight to the police station, and told them everything. Again. But unless someone was in immediate danger, they said they needed a warrant to enter the house. No sign of forced entry. No proof of a crime. I offered to show them the drawing, the emails, the text messages, the basement window. They said they'd look into it. That was 4 days ago. And last night, Emma found something in her backpack. A note, written in the same blocky letters Caleb used when he was a kid. It said, "Do you remember me now?" She asked if Caleb put it there. He didn't. And I haven't told her what it means.
Not yet.
But I will. Because I think Tanya was never the only one watching us. And I think whoever was in that basement, they're not done. After the note showed up in Emma's backpack, I didn't go to the police again. I realized something. No one was coming to help.
Not really.
Not the cops, not the system, not some neighbor who just noticed Tanya disappeared. I had to do this myself. So, I made a plan. I didn't tell Caleb or Emma anything. I told them we were going to stay with Mallory for the weekend again. Mallory said yes right away. She even offered to come with me when I told her what I was going to do. But I said no. Some things you have to finish yourself. I waited until Saturday night. Around 11 p.m., I parked down the street from Tanya's house and walked the rest of the way in dark clothes, hood up. I had a flashlight and a box of old keys Tanya had given me years ago, in case of emergency. The front door was still locked. I didn't try it. I went around the side, to the basement window, the one I'd seen cracked open. It was still open, wide enough to crawl through. I didn't think. I just did it. I dropped into the basement and landed hard on concrete. It smelled like mildew and metal. The air was damp and cold. For a few seconds, it was just dark. I didn't move. Then I heard breathing. Shaky, shallow breathing. Not mine. I turned on the flashlight. The basement wasn't empty. In the far corner was a mattress.
Stained. Old.
And sitting on it, staring straight at me, was a man. Mid-40s. Thin, pale, eyes sunken in like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. He didn't move when I pointed the light at him. He didn't even flinch. I said, "Who are you?" He said, "She said you'd come." His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much. I said again louder, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm her brother." I froze. I said, "Tanya didn't have a brother." He smiled, a weird, twitchy smile, and said, "Not on paper." I stepped back. He said, "She kept me down here after I got out. Said I couldn't be trusted. Said I'd ruin everything.
But she fed me.
Let me listen. Told me about the baby. Told me how much it screamed." I felt my stomach drop. Then he said something that made my legs shake. She told me to take care of it while she worked. She said it was a punishment. She said the baby was born from betrayal. I asked, "What did you do?" He looked proud when he said it. I dropped the crib. It hit me then. It wasn't Tanya who broke the crib that day. It was him. She let him upstairs. Left him alone with Emma. And after it happened, after I found Emma bleeding in the yard, Tanya didn't try to stop me from leaving. Because that was the plan. She didn't want me to run to the cops. She wanted me to disappear quietly, take the guilt with me.
I felt something in me snap.
I walked across the room and grabbed him by the collar. He didn't fight. He just kept smiling. He said, "She said the baby survived. That was a mistake." I shoved him to the floor. He didn't move. I went upstairs. The door at the top was locked, heavy padlock on the inside. I found the key on a nail next to the light switch. Like he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. I opened the door and stepped into Tanya's kitchen.
It was exactly the same.
Nothing touched. Coffee mug still on the counter. Her mail piled up. Shoes by the door. And then I noticed something. A smell. I followed it to the hallway. The door to her bedroom was shut. I pushed it open slowly. She was in there. On the bed.
Dead.
Face down. Skin gray. She'd been gone for a while. The bottle of pills on her nightstand was empty. There was a note next to her hand. It just said, "He wouldn't stop." I stood there in that room for a long time. Later, the police came. I told them everything. About the basement. The man. The confession. Tanya's body. They took statements, pictures, fingerprints. Said it would be a long process. I didn't care. The man, her brother, was arrested. Turns out his name was Thomas. He'd been in and out of institutions for most of his life. Violent offenses. Tanya had taken custody of him after their father died. No one followed up. No one cared. She kept him hidden for over a decade. Used him like a weapon. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it. How I lived in that house, heard the floor creak, saw the second bowl in the sink, ignored Caleb's fear. I thought I was protecting my kids. But I missed the monster in the basement. That was my mistake. And Tanya's mistake? She thought hiding him would keep her in control. But monsters don't stay caged forever. They rot. They leak. They leave stains behind. Now it's over. Emma sleeps without fear. Caleb talks about the future. I buried the crib rail in our backyard under the big tree. I didn't want to keep it anymore. But I left one thing behind, one final thing. Before I let the police in that night, I took Tanya's note, and I replaced it with mine. It said, "Comfort is earned, and you never earned it."